So at the end of the show, not everything is wrapped up. For example, Wrath. Um, Wrath loses Ed and Al's limbs, Ed's arm and his leg, and gets fitted with prosthetics by Winry, and then kind of goes off to live by himself. Gluttony. After Lust dies, Gluttony is like so lost without her that Dante gets fed up and kind of removes the human emotion from Gluttony, so he is literally just an eating machine, and ends up eating Dante after she escapes, after her plans fail. And Envy,
Yeah,
as Ed is going back to the other side of the gate, Envy follows Ed in to find Hohenheim and turns into a dragon for some reason.
yeah, yeah,
So there, I like how the show ends. It doesn't wrap everything up, but I generally enjoy how the show ends. But there is a movie sequel to the series that is supposed to be like a proper ending. It's like the end of Evangelion to Evangelion. For those of you that wanted more from the ending, here's a movie that is supposed to do a better job of the ending. Whether or not you agree it's a better job, I guess, is up to debate, but there you go. So we will talk about the Conqueror of Shamballa for a little bit, although I don't know how much we're gonna really have to talk about it. I don't think we mentioned it yet, but when the movie and the last DVD came out on the same day, you and I went back to my house and we watched it. We said meh, and I don't think either of us ever looked at it since then. Like I
yeah.
rewatched the show a few times back in the day, but I only watched the movie once. I just was not into it. Um, this time though, I did like it. I did not love it, but I did like it. If I were to watch the show again, I would watch the movie with it. But there are some things about the movie that felt a little different than the show did. It has I think most anime movies based on TV shows always have a different feeling in the movie because movies just kind of have a different feeling than the shows do. But
Yeah.
I think it kind of worked against the show in some ways. For example, all the time spent in Europe, all the colors are very washed out. Um, Despite the tone of the show in of Fullmetal Alchemist, it is usually a pretty colorful show, and when things get dark, they are shaded very well. So colors are always kind of popping out in good ways in the show, but this one, everything just kind of felt very like washed out, except when it took place in Ed and Al's world. Then it felt more normal. But you follow Ed trying to learn more about rockets and stuff like that, and he gets involved with. Well, you know what? Since it's based on history, do you want to tell it? I think you can tell it better than I can.
Well, okay, like Ed is in Germany after World War I, and it is right around the time that Nazi Party is starting to gain prominence in Germany. You see a lot of references to real world stuff that happened in Germany, like how the money is worthless. You see a guy, he has like a stack of money, and he's just like, this money can't even buy me like a beer, and, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You see like people starting to be more racist. They're saying like, like this is all like the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bring Germany back to being, pure German again, and you do straight up get like some scenes of, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, and it's pretty much like the backdrop of the movie is like the rise of Nazi Germany and why like the people were so willing to go along with this pretty extreme ideal of what Nazism is and stuff because of the outcome of World War I. Because after the war, Germany had to pay represent. I'm losing the word, but they essentially just had to pay for the war. They had a lot of reparations to pay, which tank their economy. There's a lot of like famine and stuff. People are saying the Treaty of Versailles is unfair. We should have never given up fighting and stuff like that. So it's got like that real world element of it.
Which is weird because we're so used to this world that they built up in Fullmetal Alchemist to suddenly go to something based. I mean, Fullmetal Alchemist world is based on a certain time period in a certain country, but like now that we're like we're just officially into historical fiction at this point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But it is like the backdrop. There's
Yeah.
elements of it that you know it's important, but it really is just like the backdrop. Like the main villains of the movie, I cannot remember what they are called, but they are some sort of like society that
The
is
the
trying to
the
get
yeah, the Thule
into
Society.
the, what are they called?
The Thule Society.
The Fool
I
Society.
looked up Thule Society on Wikipedia to kind of get some more context, and I guess they were an organization around this time that was studying the occult like alchemy in order to kind of um, help the Nazi Party. And I guess there's some controversy of whether or not Hitler was actually involved in this party or not, but that's basically what the Thule Society was trying to do. In fact, the villain of the movie is, I guess, based on a real person too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I,
That's interesting.
you can look more into it if you want, and I'm sure wherever you look will do a hell of a lot better job explaining it than I will because I do not do history very well. But that's kind of where that side of the gate is at right now, and Ed is kind of thrown in the middle of this because he's kind of like he's living with a guy that resembles Alphonse, and he tells out this new kid stories about made up stories basically about alchemy in his world, and no one believes him, and he gets roped up in this band of gypsies. One of them looks suspiciously like Rose, and you find out the Thule Society is trying to open a gate to Ed and Al's world. They believe it's Shamballa, which I also looked up, and I already forget the exact way it was described, but it was basically, it seemed to me like it was like a world of enlightenment in which if you ruled it, you can rule anything in life. And they were trying to do that as like a military power. And they believed Ed and Al's world was Shambhala, and they were trying to open a portal there. And to do that, they used Envy, because Envy is a dragon, and it didn't really dawn on me why Envy was a dragon, but they used planes to shoot and injure Envy, and they kind of constructed Envy into an Ouroboros. And I'm like, oh, because it's like an Eastern dragon, where it's like a serpent. So I get it now.
Yeah.
That's why Envy was the dragon. So it could be like a literal Ouroboros, and that is a catalyst to the other side of the gate. And Hohenheim is involved in that somehow. I can't remember exactly how. I just remember Hohenheim being like stuck in Envy's mouth, and Envy's like,
Yeah.
tastes like chicken.
He originally wanted to make like a portal to get Ed back home, then like things kind of got out of control, I guess.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Because you do see him at the end of the show with this society briefly, and they're like, Professor Hohenheim, you've given us so much insights, and
yeah,
the new party will love to hear your research and stuff. And
yeah.
it's like, oh shit.
But meanwhile, on the other side of the gate, Al is Ed for some reason. He like wears his hoodie and goes around and does alchemy to help people, and it kind of feels, I don't like that Al is wearing Ed's hoodie because it kind of makes him feel like less of a character. I think it's like if you're looking at it as promotional material, it's interesting because it's like, you spend so much time with Al as a suit of armor, and now he's basically trying to follow in his brother's footsteps, but just as a
I
character.
don't mind him wearing like the red coat and stuff. It's kind of like an anime trope, honestly, but like Naruto does like the same thing where like he wears his father's coat after a while and stuff. So I get that type of thing.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, in Lior, because they keep coming back to Lior like all the time.
'Cause
Um,
Lior can't get a break, man.
they keep open the soldiers from the other side of where Ed is right now come through a gate and start attacking Lior, and there's some moments where Al is trying to like save the day and stuff like that, and eventually he meets up with Wrath, and Wrath is kind of not talking to anybody, but he wants Al to follow him. He takes him down to the ruined city where the finale of the show took place, and kind of reveals that this is where they're trying to come through on the other side of the gate. And he wants, since Wrath can't do it anymore, he wants Al to do alchemy to kind of stop it from happening. But Gluttony comes back as like this really grotesque, gigantic beast, and Wrath and him have a fairly cool fight, but Gluttony ends up like crushing Wrath between its teeth.
Yeah,
And
it's like the most like ugh like
it's
part of the movie
it's
where
pretty graphic. They up the graphic violence up a little bit because it's a film now. Um, and Wrath tells Al he used them to steal the gate, but unbeknownst to them, that's actually what's triggering the transfer in between the two worlds. So on one side of the gate, the Thule Society is using Envy to open the gate, and at the same time, Al is using Wrath and Gluttony to open the gate, and that's how the rest of the homunculi die.
yeah, to be honest, this movie I don't think it's a bad movie, but I did find it kind of boring.
Yeah, it's
Um
I don't know if I would
there's
necessarily say it's boring, but I know where you're coming from because it doesn't have that kind of same energy as the show did.
yeah, because there's some like exposition dumps in the movie. Uh there's kind of like, certain things are kind of just like I don't know, like it's kind of like just a weird, depressing movie. Not super depressing, but I guess it's like melancholy.
Well, the
It's,
trailers certainly make it seem like a depressing movie. On those
yeah,
last few DVDs of the show, they made sure to advertise the hell out of this movie, and it always begins with like that song the gypsies sing at the beginning before it starts getting like really upbeat. It sounds really depressing, and
right.
they show Ed in the cart, and he's looking sad, and he looks really depressed. It yeah, I always really hated those trailers. It never really made me excited to see the movie.
Yeah, just overall, like the most interesting aspect of the movie is kind of for me the historical like fiction aspect of it because
Yeah,
the Alphonse of this world is working on rockets. That's very much like a thing that like Germany was working on at this time. Uh, give or take, maybe not being as far along with it as they were in reality in the 20s, but who knows? So that aspect of it is interesting. It is a unusual backdrop to see for a movie just in general, just because living in America, you typically don't really see like the German side of things when it comes to like World War I or II. They're kind of just like the bad guys.
yeah. One of the most interesting things I studied in college was this one class that basically told Germany's side of this story for the World Wars. It laid a lot of insight into how the world views Germany and how Germany behaved and how Germans view Germany and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah,
I was reminded of that several times while watching this movie. And I think, it is weird that it just kind of comes out of nowhere like this, but at the same time, I do think it kind of fits with some of the parts of the show where it's like everything is not black and white. There are so many more gray areas than you can imagine in this kind of thing.
yeah,
Like it's so easy to say, oh, the military is so wrong for what they did to Ishbal, but when you put every single piece of the puzzle together, it's like you can't always exactly blame the military for everything. You can't always exactly blame Scar for everything. You can't always exactly blame anyone for anything, even the homunculi. You know, like we said, Lust just wants to be a human. You know, and at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I kind of feel like that's what it comes down to. It's all about perspective, about what side you're on, and how they're telling, how the story they tell.
That aspect of the movie is the most interesting part. One other thing I will say about the movie, for this to be like a movie, it doesn't really have anything like really interesting visually happening in it.
Yeah,
Which is kind of like a letdown because sometimes with like anime movies, for the most part, you're expecting like, okay, like, well, this is a movie, so like they're gonna have more budget. Maybe they're gonna do something really cool. Like, I know it didn't work for you, but like I thought like that Escaflowne movie was like pretty interesting visually because of some of the stuff they did in the movie, and it kind of got to do some things that the show didn't do. But the Full Metal Alchemist movie is kind of like, well, it's like it's in widescreen aspect ratio. I mean, clearly, there's a little bit there's a little bit more animation. How you know it doesn't feel as grand as I would expect a movie to feel. For this type of thing. I can only think of a few anime shows that have movie finales,
yeah,
and like you said earlier, a lot of them do fall flat. But sometimes, the trade off is like, well, yeah, but like, it did have some like really interesting, cool like animation. Gundam Double O is one that is kind of a mixed bag for me, but there is like a lot of like cool, unique stuff in that movie that like you never see in the show. And the Full Metal Alchemist movie doesn't really do that. Like you think like they would like really amp up like the alchemy. Most of the movie takes place in a world where you can't do alchemy, so
some of the
it's
promotional
like, oh,
material kind of said like the greatest alchemical battles are yet to come, but alchemy kind of was a very played down part in this movie.
yeah,
I feel like this entire point of this movie was to kind of just expand more upon that otherworld aspect of the show. That they introduced at the
yeah.
very end, which, I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing or not. Um, I was really expecting to not like the movie at all, so maybe that's why I'm a little more fond towards it. But
I don't dislike it. Just to let you know,
yeah,
I
it's
just
just
feel like
it's
a little
boring,
underwhelmed by it, to be honest.
and it is because like the ending of the show still felt like a finale. I mean, like the second half of the final episode was they were playing credits throughout it. It felt like the end of like a video game where you get all those scenes mixed in between the credits. I didn't really feel like the movie needed to exist. I kind of like the idea of like the hope that they can find each other once again someday was more of a nice send off than the actual movie was, because they do end up being together at the end, but Al just ends up being in this new world with Ed, and they leave Winry all by herself with her grandma and dog that
Yeah,
are probably going to die soon.
kind of a big bummer. One would argue that the show is a pretty dark show, and that ending, kind of a downer ending. I mean, Ed and Al do get to be together at the end. However, they like lose all their friends and family too.
I mean, I guess there is like the little bit where it's like, oh, well, together we can find a way back home. So I guess that's kind of still there, but like still, it's just kind of like, eh, I don't know.
Yeah,
It felt like the movie wasn't conceived so much because they wanted a big finale, but because Full Metal Alchemist was so popular and did so well, they thought the movie would just bring in more. Because I was
yeah,
watching I was watching the extras on the movie about the creation of the movie, and this movie started production like around halfway through the show, So it's like they knew ahead of time how good the show was doing. They'll definitely do this.
Yeah.
It's not like End of Eva, where, for whatever you want to believe, I certainly believe that it was created because fans were babies.
Yeah. It's weird. I kind of lost my train of thought briefly, but this movie too, you know, like you said, the show was a huge big deal, and you know they started making a movie, and I do wonder if, like, you know, the show is 51 episodes, and I wonder if they just were originally, well, we're gonna do like maybe like 60 episodes, and then like somebody was like, no, do a movie instead, like to end it.
Maybe.
Because I do wonder if like they were gonna do like more episodes instead of a movie, but then like somebody was just like, no, you should do a movie instead.
I don't know. It's hard because like the last 10 episodes really feel like it's building up to a finale. And then once that finale happens,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, but now here's a whole bunch of new stories, some new game plus post game stuff that you can play with. And it's like,
Yeah, and I do wonder too if like maybe almost like an inkling of like almost considering like, well, we're gonna do a movie, but you know, maybe we'll do another season, but then like maybe like people got involved and were like, yeah, don't do that. Because, you know, they came back, you know, 3 years later after this movie and did, you know, the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood anime. And that anime actually got a movie and ran for more episodes. Not too many more episodes,
yeah,
but
I just
it
found
ran
that
for
out.
64 episodes.
I
Yeah.
was looking at Brotherhood. I thought Brotherhood ran like over 100 episodes. It's only like 65 or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
it's
barely
64
longer than
episodes
this
and it
one.
has a actually canon. And there's one thing in the movie I forgot I did remember thinking of before. There's a weird subplot in the movie with a nuclear bomb at the beginning of the movie that comes up at the very end of the movie that Ed and Al are like, hey, you remember when we fought that guy that made that nuclear bomb? Well, that's in this world now, and we gotta find it.
Oh, no, the part at the beginning was just a story Ed was making up. That didn't actually happen.
No, but like
But like later on, they do find the
they
new.
showed a picture with that with people holding that bomb that was from that part that happened, and that bomb is in like, you know, this world now.
I don't know. It's
It's weird too because it also dabbles in, I'm not 100% sure, but it kind of dabbles in like some like alternate history type of thing too, because like the Nazi party tries to take over but they fail, and it's like, well, that threat is over, but this world is heading towards, you know, another great war. And you know, I didn't look it up, but I don't know if the Nazi party tried to take over at first and then failed and then a couple years later took over,
yeah.
but I don't know if that's how it actually went down.
I don't know. I know Wikipedia says that it takes place in an alternate reality of our Earth. So, but that's not the impression I got from the movie. I just thought it was kind of how it was, and it was just historical fiction at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, like, well, I don't know. Maybe that is something to consider because, like, if you haven't noticed, us talking about the movie had almost nothing to do with Fullmetal Alchemist, and a lot to do with World War stuff, but not Fullmetal
Yeah.
Alchemist. And maybe that's worth noting when going to the movie. Maybe that's why I didn't really like it the first time I looked at it, because it does involve Fullmetal Alchemist stuff, but the backdrop maybe feels too prominent sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you get like Mustang show up and
Mustang shows up,
be a
Armstrong shows
soldier
up,
now.
Winry
Yeah.
shows up. I can't believe I haven't talked about Winry. Oh well. I got a soft spot for Winry. I don't know. She's a cute character. She does a lot for Ed. Ed doesn't appreciate it. Pisses me off.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing we didn't really talk about too before is that it kind of bothers me a little bit how both Ed and Al are prodigies, because it feels a little too convenient that they're like the best at everything they do. And I was wondering, it's like, well, why don't you feel that way about Winry being a mechanic? And I'm like, huh, that's a good question, because Winry is like a prodigy automaton mechanic. And then I thought about it some more, and it's like, well, those guys in high school that like work in shop and like go to what's it called, vocational school early on to do like work on studying cars and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess I could buy Winry can be like really good at mechanics at that age, especially if her family owns the business.
Yeah.
But Ed and Al, I mean, Ed's like the more prodigy child than Al is, but they're both supposed to be like top of their class. It's just kind of weird seeing them as like little children. And it was like, oh my god, you've already come such a long way in studying all of these alchemy books from your father's library. And I'm just like thinking of me at 5 years old, and it's like, I was barely getting through Berenstain Bears, and these guys are reading like college textbooks about science. Okay,
yeah,
sure, why not?
When I was 5, it was just like Power Rangers are like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I don't know. It's a little
unrealistic.
Hard to swallow, but was there anything else I wanted to talk about? Oh, there was, and it has nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
Oh, there's a few things, a few little stray thoughts that don't really matter too much. There is a military character called Archer that's introduced like halfway through the show, and
oh yeah,
he gets all of his skin blown off, and he comes back as a robot, and it's hilarious. Robo Archer is like the stupidest thing I've seen in anime in a long time, and I laugh so hard every time he's on screen. He has like
he's a cyborg, man.
But he looks so dumb. He looks so dumb. I hope I can find a picture.
His mouth doesn't move when he talks, and he has like a gun in his mouth.
Yeah,
too.
but it does move when he opens it up. Like a gun pops out, and it's like it's stupid. It's stupid, and I love how stupid it is. I mentioned that they had a lot of nice extras on the DVDs, and one thing I did notice that doesn't have anything to do with Fullmetal Alchemist, but I really want to know if you've seen it or heard of it. Please let me know in the comments. If anyone has heard of Mr. Stain on Junk Alley, it's these series of CG shorts that they promoted on a lot of these Funimation DVDs about this bum in an alley that lives with a cat. And it's very surreal, and it's completely silent. No one talks. It's all just visual humor. I just find it very charming, and I've never really hear anyone talk about it. So if anyone has any comments on what it is, feel free to let me know. And a YouTuber I like, one of my favorite YouTubers, was Rebel Taxi, and he did a video about some of the worst cartoons ever made, and one of them was about Tony Hawk's weird CG movie.
Boom Boom Hawk Jam.
Yep. There are trailers for that on my DVDs, and I thought that was
made it.
I thought it was hilarious, because I thought that was just some random piece of who knows what, and here it is in Fullmetal Alchemist DVDs. Yeah, I don't know.
That's our next podcast. It's gonna go on as long as about Boom Boom Hawk Jam.
The philosophy of Tony Hawk. Boom Boom Sabotage. Was it Huck Jam? Because they called it Boom Boom Sabotage on
maybe it's Boom Boom Sabotage.
I know the name.
The event is Boom Boom Hawk Jam.
I know the name. I know Rebel Taxi said the name changed a lot, but I don't know.
I've seen that movie like once.
Oh, you've actually seen it?
Yeah, of course, dude. Come on. Well, how would I not have seen that movie?
I don't know.
I was a huge skateboarding fan.
Yeah, I don't know. Those don't have anything to do with Fullmetal Alchemist. I just wanted to bring those up. But anyway,
you can use alchemy to make a pretty cool skateboard, I guess.
You could turn. Yeah, you can buy a surfboard and skateboard wheels and use alchemy to turn it into a skateboard, just like how it was developed in the real world.
Make some cool ramps and
But
Pretty cool.
anyway, so at the end of the day, Fullmetal Alchemist was a really good show. I was not expecting it to be so good, especially halfway through the show when I honestly didn't know how I felt about it to begin with, because of just how the tone changed so often, so quickly. It was very distracting to me. I like consistency in my storytelling, I guess. I mean, it's not always like a law or anything. There are a lot of really stupid, funny things, like the thing with Robo Archer. I thought was so stupid it worked for me, but a lot of the jokes kind of like were meh and kind of distracting. But at the end of the day, Fullmetal Alchemist got so good. I think I would definitely have to give it some kind of A rank. I think A minus, just because of all the stuff I had problems with before. But it was really good. I don't know if I would say like recommend it to someone that doesn't like anime, especially since they have to get through that first half where all those jokes may not work for them if they're not anime fans. But if you like if you know someone that likes cartoons, like storytelling in cartoons, like if someone like Teen Titans or Avatar, shows like that, and they've never seen Fullmetal Alchemist, I would say definitely recommend it to them. Like, I would say this is, if you're even trying to get into anime, Fullmetal Alchemist would be a pretty good place to start, because even though it does get super heavy, the truth is, anime can get into topics like this, and I think that's a good representation. Fullmetal Alchemist here represents a lot of what you might expect to find in other anime shows. Um,
Yeah.
the movie itself, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a must watch, but you know, if you can, it wouldn't hurt. It's a little hard to find right now because I don't think it's on anything streaming aside from Crunchyroll. Um,
Yeah, I actually I watched the show but couldn't find the movie anywhere. But luckily I had a copy of the movie at my parents' house, so I
yeah,
picked it up from there and was
yeah.
like, all right, cool.
The show's on Netflix. Almost everybody has Netflix, so if you've always wanted to check it out, there's really no excuse, I guess. It's easy enough to look at. The movie I would say is more of like a B minus for me, I guess. Um, maybe it would go down to C a little bit once the newness of it wears off for me, and I look back at things like this in the grand scheme of things. But what about you, Chris? Where would you put Fullmetal Alchemist on a ranking list?
I mean, yeah, the series, I'm probably like A minus. The movie, I don't know where I'd put the movie, to be perfectly honest. Like maybe like a B minus, honestly. Like the movie just is so. It's
Meh.
like I said, it's not
It's meh.
bad, but it's just
It's meh.
kind of like there. But it's not. The movie's okay. So yeah, I'd maybe put like B minus, maybe C plus for the movie.
Yeah, but it's been a real pleasure finally revisiting this show after wanting to go back to it for so long. I'm really curious to see how Brotherhood holds up. Maybe we'll do a Brotherhood episode in the future, but it's not going to be part of this kind of retrospective project, probably. And since I'm reading the manga now, I probably won't feel the need to go to Brotherhood immediately, since it is essentially the manga, right? It's not like drastically different or anything.
Yeah, the only difference between Brotherhood is the opening episode is like our original story, and then it kind of goes through everything the original 2003 anime did in like a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Like you get to the death of Hughes fairly quickly in Brotherhood, and then it's like kind
Oh
of
yeah.
like here's all the new stuff with like Shing and like Father. I mean,
Yeah.
Father is in the first episode just to be like, hey, we're doing the manga. Like,
Like at the end of Hellsing Ultimate, episode 1, where they do the major teaser, even though he's not really revealed until like a few volumes in.
yeah, to just briefly say one thing about Brotherhood though,
Go ahead.
almost all of Brotherhood's openings are absolutely fantastic. This show, the second and fourth one are definitely the best. The first one, I don't even think they aired that one on TV for some reason. And then the third opening is like, it's like, oh, it's that band that did that Naruto intro that everybody makes fun of.
I like the intros of this show that we watched, except for the first intro. I really hated the first intro song a lot, but everything
Yeah,
else in terms of endings and intros is pretty good. But
but
with that,
Brotherhood openings are really good.
the one I remember specifically is the one where it's rotating around each of the three squads
Oh
for
yeah.
Naruto. But enough about Naruto. This is the Naruto podcast. We're rambling on at this point. Thank you for listening. Next time is going to be something much lighter, for sure. And until then, let us know what you think about Fullmetal Alchemist. How do you feel about tones in anime and in this show in particular? What characters did you like, etc., etc.? I don't know. Let us know. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.